They said, we need a guy who can present, who can blog, who can edit, who can also write front page articles. And I said, yeah, sure, I'm your guy. I had no experience in blogging or editing or presenting, but I bluffed myself in. I felt I was well equipped for that job. At one point, I was kind of like the face of Dutch poker, at least at the time. So I felt very comfortable. I was kind of proud of what I reached without like a journalistic background or anything. And then I was inducted in the Poker Hall of Fame. So on top of it being an honor to be inducted, I was very emotional at the time. There's some photos where, I'm crying a little bit because it was a beautiful moment.
Welcome to the iGaming Leader Podcast, where we uncover the human side of some of the most inspirational leaders in our industry. I'm your host, Leo Judkins, and as an ex-iGaming director turned performance coach, I've worked with over 200 leaders from companies like Entain, 365, Flutter, and many more to help them build the habits to achieve sustainable high performance. In these episodes, we share exactly what it takes for you to achieve the same. So with that being said, let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the iGaming Leader Podcast. I am here today with somebody that I have been following for a very, very long time. So super excited to speak to you, Frank op de Woerd. I don't know how to pronounce it in English, but so we'll just do it in Dutch. Frank op de Woerd. Really excited to have you here. Founder of Casino News, co-founder of CasinoNieuws.nl, of course, massive in Holland. And I've been following you for a long time when you were still with PokerNews for a very long time. So welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah, great to have you. Hey, Frank, I wanted to start off with kind of the mid 2000s. We were talking about it before, kind of that poker boom and how everything was so different back then, right? Poker was on TV at midnight. We were all playing the Americans, waking up to collect some money. But I'd like you to go a little bit back before that. How did you actually get into the industry before you even joined PokerNews?
No, it was from moment one, it was through Poker News, to be honest. Like you, I got excited about poker. I was seeing it on TV. I was playing. I think it was at first on PokerStars and Everest Poker. They had these 1 or 5 cents pre-roll, the Shastas and whatnot. But at one point, obviously, I went looking for some strategy. I went to Poker News and they had a big forum. So I got involved there. Obviously, looking back at it, I asked a lot of stupid questions. I was a total beginner, total newbie, but I was hooked from moment one, really. I've been always enjoying playing games, never like a huge gamer, but like games within the family, card games. I was always interested in that. And, from one thing led to the other. I got more involved. I got 1,000 posts. I got 2,000 posts at that forum. I became a moderator. That was, it was an honor to be one of the moderators there. And then I became head moderator. And then at one point, I started working for a company which was called Poker Lessons, drunk people explaining them the rules of poker in like 20 minutes and then playing a little game. That company was kind of merging or collaborating with Poker News. So they needed a guy who would write these silly 500-word articles on RX adventures. So that was my first writing gig for Poker News. So at one point they started a magazine, like a physical magazine. So we had a physical magazine where I started working on that. I interviewed people. And then at one point they said they would always go to the WSOP in Vegas for 7 weeks straight every year. They said, we need a guy or a girl, obviously, who can present, who can blog, who can edit, and who can also write front page articles. And I said, yeah, sure, I'm your guy. I had no experience in blogging or really editing or presenting, but I bluffed myself in. So I went to Vegas for 7 weeks straight. But those 7 weeks in Vegas, they flew by. I was extremely excited to stay in poker. And he said, you want to stay working with us? I can offer you, I think it was 2,000 euros a month, something like that, and I said, yeah, let's do it. I want to stay in poker. I want to be that poker reporter. I want to go everywhere. At the time, they still had the European Poker Tour. I think they had 13 stops in a year at the time. And we had the Unibet Opens, we had WSP. So It was crazy and I loved it. So I started working with them. And that's really how I got involved in gambling. I started going to the World Series of Poker 2008. And then from that moment on, for 13 years straight, I went to the World Series of Poker every year and I've greatly enjoyed it. It was the time of my life.
So cool. So we were talking about this before. We kind of had the same start, right? I did the same thing, quit my job, was kind of living at home, and also quickly realized that I was also on this point where you were, I think, where I realized, okay, yeah, I'm pretty okay with playing poker, but I'm not going to make it in the poker world, right? And there's this quote that you had, my losing sessions hurt way more than the enjoyment of the winning sessions, right? And I think like that's level of self-awareness. I thought when I read that from you, I thought that was so cool. So is that like, how was that for you, Frank? Because that, like kind of that realization, if you're so passionate about that, that area, that poker in itself, it must have been very difficult.
I reached a level where these guys are really good. And at the time you had Poker Office, which was, the stats tracking. It wasn't really my thing. I was interested in it, but I couldn't really grab it. And then I was reading our forums and I could understand everything that they're explaining, but I couldn't really do it myself. But yeah, I was hooked by poker in itself. So when I got the opportunity to go to Vegas for 7 weeks, I jumped at it and I had no issue with not playing myself. I would play the daily deep stack every now and then or some small cash game, but it wasn't like I felt like I'm majorly missing out because I saw that people would lose their buy-ins as well. And people could get down on their luck. So I very much enjoyed having the perks of being in that atmosphere, being in Vegas, being in Monaco, Barcelona, Melbourne, and everything, hanging out with these ballers. I got invited a lot to a lot of parties. So, I had my fair share of fun at the time, but it didn't cost me an arm and a leg, basically. So, no, I was very happy with how that all turned out. And I feel that, so we did interviews, but we also made daily videos and whatnot. And I could talk on a certain level with these high roller, high level, high stakes players. I could ask the right questions. People looking at our videos, watching our videos would understand that I wasn't like some total idiot. So I was believable. I felt I was well equipped for that job. And yeah, I was striving. And, at one point I was kind of like the face of Dutch poker, at least at the time. So yeah, I felt very comfortable. I was kind of proud of what I reached without like a journalistic background or anything. I was, presenting. My mother heard me it was always 1 a.m. when they showed these poker shows in the Netherlands, but still it was my voice she heard. So she kind of got around to it. And I'm not sure if she was proud, but at least it was more than just some anonymous website for her.
Man, you know what? Just for the listeners here, so I was in the poker industry at the same time in Holland as well, in Dutch. And you were a superstar, man. You were like, everybody was following you. And so thank you for everything you've done in the industry, because you were on TV all the time. Poker was on the TV all the time. Your face was everywhere. Your news was everywhere. How was that lifestyle for you? All of that traveling, that must have, that's a very demanding lifestyle, traveling a lot, reporting a lot, on TV late nights. Like, how was that? How did you feel about that? Must have been very exciting, but must have had a very demanding side as well.
I was away from home for weeks out of the year and I would eat very unhealthy. I remember in Vegas, it was at the Rio at the time. You had All American Bar and Grill. I would eat there six nights out of 7. I was very unhealthy. I was growing, and I was enjoying myself. I partied a lot. I was invited to a lot of parties and late nights. I was always trying to go from one stop straight to the other instead of flying back home for 2 days. I would ask for the best hotels or at least the best breakfast, for example. So stuff like that. It was just exciting. And I had my friends at home, but I was still living at home. So I didn't have like a house that I needed to take care of, or I didn't have a girlfriend or a wife like I have now. And I have a son right now. None of that. It was just a different time. It was just very exciting to be part of. And yeah, like I said, at least, for the poker fans, or, I had some recognition as well. So I felt proud. Some of my friends from back home, they would follow me around. I was big on Twitter at the time. Obviously, I don't use it anymore, but, that was the medium of interest for the poker world. I had a lot of followers. People were following them. It was a good time.
Just to kind of underline what you've done for the industry, I think in 2015 you co-founded the Dutch Poker Hall of Fame, right? And then in 2019, you were the first media member to get awarded by your peers and be recognized. Such an honor. How, like that? I thought that was super cool. How did you how was that moment for you? How did that feel?
Yeah, getting inducted into the Poker Hall of Fame was a bit of a weird one, because I started the Poker Hall of Fame because, you have the International Poker Hall of Fame. Every year I would nominate Marcel Lusk and Noah Boeke, two of the great poker players, and they would never get in because, it's mostly Americans and whatnot. So I figured, we need to have our own Dutch Poker Hall of Fame. And I started it. I worked with Holland Casino here in the Netherlands to give it some weight, and we had a proper ceremony, and we had a website and whatnot. But my first rule was, I cannot get in, because it's kind of weird if it's my Poker Hall of Fame that I would get in myself. And we have the public voting, but we also have the sitting members. They decide who gets in, not me. And so I set it up properly, so I couldn't get into any issues there. But in 2019, they decided that I needed to be in there anyway. It was really a surprise to me when I got in, and I was very honored, and I was very emotional at the time as well. I had just gotten married. I had just had my son, and I was without a job. So and I had, obviously at the time, by then I had my own house and whatnot. So I had responsibilities, and all of a sudden I had no job for the first time in my life, basically, of course. And so I was, and my wife was fired as well a couple months before. And then I was inducted in the Poker Hall of Fame. So on top of it being an honor, to be inducted, it was some sort of validation as well. And that's why I was very emotional at the time. There's some photos where, I'm crying a little bit, because it was a beautiful moment. And I was very happy about it. And obviously, like I said, honored. And then, but I figured, I can always go back to poker reporting, right? I know everyone in the poker world. I know how to write. I can present. I'll be fine, right? I was very honored to get inducted. But at the same time, a Poker Hall of Fame, to me, it should be about the poker players first. But, some people were very important for the game of poker and the popularity of the game of poker in the Netherlands as well, but weren't per se poker players. So I was one of them. So maybe I should be in that Hall of Fame as well. It's kind of like a semantic discussion, right? What should be a Poker Hall of Fame? What should be the Basketball Hall of Fame? I don't know. People have different thoughts, but there were more people that were important for the popularity of the game, not per se the best players or anything. So it wasn't that I was a one-off, but I was the first media member, and I'm still very honored that I'm in there. And I still have it listed, I think, on my LinkedIn, for example. It's one of these things, right? When you look back at it, I was the head of content for Poker News, which I felt very proud of. I a member of the Poker Hall of Fame that I'm proud of, and now I'm a founder of a website that's doing well, and I'm also proud of that.
Yes, and rightly so. Then COVID happened, right? So you've got all these things happening at the same time. You're a new dad, which for anybody that isn't a parent yet means that you're losing a lot of sleep. So you're already not, you're not at your best. It's difficult, the first few years with a kid. You had your own home, right? You've got your first mortgage. Your wife loses your job. Then COVID hits. So that would have knocked somebody out. That would have been less resilient than you. How did you manage through that time?
Through my poker career, like poker reporting, it wasn't making you rich, but there was always some money in there, right? I had experience. So I felt it was always in the back of my mind. It was a backup plan, basically. Whatever happens, I can always go back to poker reporting, earn a couple hundreds a day, and, make a living and see some cool places. But COVID happened, and all of a sudden that backup plan was gone. There were no tournaments. I was scheduled for a poker tournament in Paris, and that got canceled. I just got back from Punta del Este in Uruguay, and that was the last big tournament that happened that year. And all of a sudden, I had a real problem. I had some money saved up. I could easily get by for 6 months, but after 6 months, it was tricky. Or some people contacted me and they had wild plans. They talked about the Dutch online gambling market opening up but it was still more than a year out at the time. And they said, we're going to invest a year of our time. And then when the market opens, we're going to reap the rewards. And I said, yeah, it all sounds great, but I don't have that year. I can't go by a year without earning any income. I simply have to pay my mortgage and my son's diapers and whatnot. So I told these very friendly people, that's a no-go for me. But then things changed, fortunately, because someone contacted me I'd never heard of. And he said, my name is Jan de Mol. You've never heard of me, but I know you because I've been following poker. I play poker a little bit, and I want to start a gambling affiliate website. And my first reply was, I have no interest in gambling. I only enjoy poker because it's a skill game. But yeah, you can only be so brass for so long because, like I said, I needed some money as well. So I said, but we can always have a conversation. But I wanted to make sure that the one that I was talking to was not shady. That was like a proper person, someone honest, not in it for quick bucks or anything. And he said, you and I have a mutual friend, Armijn Meijer. Contact him and ask him about me. And I'm sure it'll make you feel more comfortable. So I rang Armijn and I said, who's Jan de Mol? He said, yeah, he's a poker player, but he's also a very serious affiliate in the Netherlands. And he's a straight shooter. He's an honest guy, a hard worker. He's done it himself. He's not there's a lot of shady characters in the industry, in gambling, but in affiliation for sure as well. So COVID really hit. So there was a lockdown at the time, but I said, I'll come to Burlingame and we can meet. And on a Saturday morning, I drove here and we had a meeting and it just clicked right away. I felt a connection. And I've told him this myself as well. Obviously, I had limited options. I needed something, but I said, if we're doing this, I need a salary. Even if we're investing for a year or building the website for a year without even going live at first and then being live with no banners, no affiliation, no links, no nothing, I still need a salary. And he said, okay. And I said, my rule number 2 is if we're doing reporting, we're doing proper reporting. We're doing real news. We're not just writing what others are writing or, quick bits. Obviously, you didn't have ChatGPT at the time, but you could, scan an article and have 400-page version of it yourself within half an hour. I said, no, okay, if we're doing it, we're doing proper reporting. We're sharing our sources and whatnot. And he said, yeah, that sounds like my idea as well. And I think I was here in March 2020, something like that. And April 14th, we started. So yeah, it was good.
So cool, Frank. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about there is I also remember the transition from poker to sports betting and casino. And I was in the same mindset as you, right? You go, but it's a skill game. And now I'm going to go into this area that, like many people that have no experience with the gambling industry is a bit of I don't know, it's just tarnished, right? Where you feel that it's full of people that are super addicted and there's businesses that just help people get addicted. That's kind of the outside view when you're not inside of it for many people. And then obviously over the years, as you start, you see that that's actually very different. But how was that for you? I know that you were saying you needed a job, but that must have been a difficult decision as well, right? Like that mindset shift from poker to gaming.
So sports betting has always been a bit of an outlier for me because I knew professional sports betting players as well. So I knew there was skill involved there. But yeah, like typical gambling, there was always something that I didn't really felt a connection with. Obviously, everyone's gambled. But, you had PokerStars back in the day. That was just poker, but you also had party poker with the blackjack logo on the top left corner. So I didn't feel comfortable with that at the time. But because of poker in the Netherlands, I've always been interested in the legislation in the Netherlands. And it was illegal, but it wasn't illegal because, like you said, it was on TV. I didn't feel like I was doing something illegal.
Like so many things in Holland,
Yeah.
like everything.
Basically. That's what we build our country on. But yeah, no, so I didn't feel, but I knew there was legislation in the works. So I always kept tabs on what's going on there. So I was well aware that we were in the process of regulation, legislation, writing new legislation. So I was interested in that part of it because it was also relevant for poker. Because if the legislation opens up, we have proper poker, online poker. I hoped that we would get proper live poker as well outside of Holland Casino. That never happened, but so I was tapped into that, and that made the transition maybe a little bit easy, because at first I was building the website, writing articles mostly on the legislation part, because I felt it very hard to find proper information on what's going on, what's the current state, when is the legislation happening. You had Gaming in Holland that had a newsletter once a week that gave us an update, but I wanted more, and I was looking into stuff that was shared from our government, from the regulator. So that eased me into it, and more I appreciated that, gambling has been going on for 60,000 years. I had gambled in my life. I'd been in casinos. I wasn't addicted. So I eased into it basically. And when I fully immersed myself into gambling, I look back at it as like, wow, poker's just so tiny. It's just a fraction of everything. How could I been so invested in poker and not see the potential of these other games? And live casino was, so yeah, I felt like, wow, I've been in this industry for so long, but I'd never seen the full scope of what is gambling, and poker's tiny bit of it. Obviously, poker was bigger back in the days. You had more online poker rooms and whatnot. Everyone's starting their own online poker room. You had big networks with different skins, but still, poker has always been, I think, for the majority of the online poker rooms, an acquisition tool to get people into the environment of gambling instead of being the end destination. So yeah, I eased into it. I was very interested in the regulation part of it, and I still don't gamble myself, and I will still warn a lot of people, but I don't see the harm in it anymore as big as I used to be.
No, exactly. It makes a lot of sense. And I think that's true for everybody well, not for everybody, but that's true for people as they move into it and they start seeing that actually it's a tiny fraction. And as long as we're responsible, right, it's all good. One of the things I wanted so when you launched Casino News, Frank, like 2020, right? One of the things that you were doing is you had this kind of ramp up period where you were just grinding out, like you were writing and creating the websites, right? Like that level of intensity. I think you've edited like 1,000 articles or something, or oversaw like 1,000 articles before before the whole thing even went out. Like that level of dedication and work ethic is just something else. And I kind of see that coming back with you. I see that in like how you were going about poker tours and travel. And, have you always been like that? Have you always had that kind of work ethic in you?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, and I feel very flattered that you're putting it like that. And I don't want to put out too many cliches here, but I never saw it as working, grinding, or whatever. I thoroughly enjoyed everything that I was doing. When I was doing poker, I didn't look at my watch like, oh my God, is it 3 a.m. Yet? Because I want to go home. No, I was excited. Who's going to win this tournament? What hands are they playing? This is crazy. I wanted to share it with the world. I ran back to my computer because I was excited to share what I had seen. And it's kind of similar for when we started building Casino News. I felt like, wow, this is interesting. People must be interested in. We saw our numbers grow, the visitors. Obviously, there was no monetization yet, but you could see that we were building something and that people were interested in it. You had some other websites that were in that same space already, but I felt they didn't do what we were doing and people were interested in it. And I, one of the biggest validations that I had was because Jan, my partner in Casino News, he was active back in the day already when it was a gray area. So the regulator, co-affiliation was always in this little gray area where they were very wary of the regulator and the ministry. They wanted to stay away from those as far as possible. But we were like a legit affiliate. Obviously, we weren't doing affiliation yet, but we were gearing up for it. But so we had all of a sudden access to the regulator, and I did an interview request for the chairman of the regulator, which was unheard of at the time that a commercial website, or at least an affiliation website, would have an interview with the regulator. But they agreed, and that was just crazy to me that we got that access. I asked Holland Casino, and it was during COVID. I need photos for my blackjack session. Can I make photos in Holland Casino of every blackjack combination? And they said, yeah, that's okay. We'll give you 3 full days, 2 dealers, and you can make photos of anything you want. And we got 100,000 euros in chips to play with, obviously to make photos of, not to, we couldn't keep them. But like that yeah, that was shit. But that level of access was crazy and unheard of, and I hadn't anticipated that either. But to the bold or the brave, I just tried, and they agreed. So we had those photos. I did the interview with the regulator, and all of a sudden we had like a real proper website with real visitors that would return every day. And obviously we weren't making any money yet, but we saw the potential. So we started hiring people as well, and we took it very, very serious. But one of the funny things is actually, so we had regulation. It started on October 1st, 2021. But they only announced the license holders 2 days or a day before. And ICE was going on, or IGB in Amsterdam was going on. So I was in Amsterdam staying in a hotel. I got up very early in the morning. No, I stayed up all night to see who the licensees would be. And I published a simple article, just a news article. I think it was 500 words. These are the license holders. These are the people that got their license from the Kansspel. We built our website on that simple article, because that one became the number one when you search for legal online casino in the Netherlands at one point, because we, as the first one, had the 10 names of the license holders. We built this whole website with all this information, a whole section about online casino and whatnot. But this simple news article that really got us thousands and thousands of visitors, because everyone was looking, I want to gamble online legally now. I've heard that this is possible in the Netherlands. Where do I need to go? And we had the answer. So yeah, it was an amazing time as well. And we got lucky a couple times, but it was also hard work, of course, but it didn't feel like hard work or anything. And it still doesn't. I still enjoy it.
Yeah, and man, it's I don't know, like, it sounds like for you there was also no real difference between being a head of content and being a founder of the business, right? It's like entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial. It's still, you feel that level of ownership within your job, whatever the job was. Am I getting that right?
I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father had his own business. My brother has his own. He just sold his own business, but still. But I never had that urge to be an entrepreneur myself. I very much enjoyed working for a boss, first locally here in the Netherlands for Noah Boeke, Jordi Veeboer, later internationally. And so I didn't have that, that entrepreneurship DNA or anything, but it came kind of natural. We were building this website. I had very strong ideas about how to do the reporting, how to do the news section, the explanatory pages. My business partner, Jan, had very strong ideas about the SEO bit, and obviously the website name was his idea and stuff like that. So it was more organic. And yeah, I feel the ownership, of course. It's my website. When something is wrong, people WhatsApp me or call me up and not my reporter. So, I'm the one responsible. I take responsibility, but it's also at the same time that makes me, there's no days off. I don't mind it at all, but it is what it is. I was on holidays in Turkey 2 weeks ago, but I'm still on my phone a lot. I don't, putting in an out of office reply, like back in a week, that's not something I feel comfortable with at this point. Maybe later, you never know, but I still feel very responsible.
Yeah, because that's something that I'd love to touch on, Frank, because one of the things you said is that you're hoping that this is going to be your last ever thing, right? That you can retire from with Casino News. I think one of the problems as founders that we have is that it's our baby, right? And so you feel very attached. And like you said, you get WhatsApp whenever something's wrong, not the person that wrote it. And it also makes you the bottleneck sometimes, right? Because your standards are way higher than everybody else. Like, how do you deal with that as you try and grow the business and maybe scale in the future? What are some of the challenges that you see for yourself?
Yeah, I feel that's the responsibility as the CEO as well, to put the right people in place. So I feel comfortable at one point to leave them responsible. I have a great head of SEO. I'm officially still the editor in chief, but I have a very senior editor that I feel very comfortable with. I have a finance guy, you know, I'm putting the right people in place, hopefully, and I feel very comfortable with that. But there's always that in the background that
It's in your head, right? That's the problem. Yeah.
yeah. So, and maybe later I'll be able to step away from it. But I have not that urge right now. I very much still enjoy what I'm doing. I feel very comfortable with all the responsibilities that are there. If it were up to me, I would do this till I'm 70 or 80. I enjoy the industry that we're in. I enjoy the position that we have as Casino News, but also the other websites that we have, because we bought a network 2 years ago, something like that. And so we have a lot of other websites in the same space as well. Yeah, I'm not looking to retire at all. So yeah, that's not really, it's not something that I really have to worry about just yet.
Yes. And that kind of leads me to something else, Frank. What you were saying about that KSA article and that kind of making your website boom. I've got two questions from people inside of our iGaming Leader Mastermind. One is from Alex Windsor, also affiliate business. He said, what kind of content beyond the typical top list had the biggest impact on traffic or conversations for you? Did you publish something controversial that got pushback or wider media attention? Like, how did that go? You of course mentioned the first license holders, but how's that gone for you in your business?
So we have, we write a lot of content, and we create a lot of other content as well. Sometimes you put hours and hours into something and it barely registers, you don't see a spike whatsoever. And then there's other articles that you write like 40 minutes and it gets thousands of visitors. Sometimes you don't know, it's no secret, but people love reading about jackpots. If someone wins $1 million and we write about it, obviously we get a lot of attention with that, but that's not something that I'm extremely proud of. That's just something that I register. Other stuff that we've done that's really made for some, not controversy per se, but like when we write something that is not beneficial to one of the license holders or even one of our partners, that's always tricky, because we're an affiliate. But affiliation is our business model. I don't see ourselves as an affiliate. I see ourselves as a website, and the way we make money is affiliation. But we're a news website first, and that should have a precedent above anything else. So when at one point there was like a license holder that was our partner as well, they did something that was not allowed by the regulator. It was pretty clear in the legislation. It was not like a gray area. They did something that wasn't allowed. They sent an email to their old database from before they were a license holders. That's simply not allowed. Okay, I feel we need to write about this. I don't say that we're all investigative journalists or reporters, but this is something very clear that we're seeing. If I'm not reporting on it, that would be weird as well. I feel we give all parties involved, obviously, the right to comment on it, even sometimes see before we publish something, so that if we are inaccurate somewhere, they can respond. But we published it, and yeah, it got obviously some pushback from the operator. It made for other parties in our industry saying like, why are you writing about these bad things? These, it's bad for the industry. It's bad for our name. It's bad for our image. And I said, that could be, but I wasn't the one doing something illegal. I just reported on it. And I felt, that's something that is our duty as a website that's calling themselves Casino News. You got to bring the news on the casinos, if that's good or if that's bad. We have the same thing with these player claims in the Netherlands. Obviously, that could be problematic for these license holders, but it is still something that's happening in the industry. So we need to report on it, even if it's bad for our partners. I'm sorry, but we have to. So sometimes the stuff that we write that makes for either a controversy or people don't like that we're writing about it, but that's just part of the game. If you want to be this platform that we claim to be, then we need to accept that as well. And our partners need to accept that from us as well. There's some international companies that really don't have experience with that kind of thing. There some of the British operators that are active in the Netherlands as well. They don't see that from their affiliates, that they write bad things or transgressions or whatnot. So they push back a lot. Some of them don't push back at all, but some of them I have phone calls with basically every other week because they read something that they don't like. That's part of the game. And then obviously we're fortunate that we're kind of big. We bring them a lot of STDs and whatnot as well. So it's not as easy for them to cancel our account or anything. Or at least I hope that they feel that our partnership is worth it in the end. But sometimes we step on some toes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man, I love that, Frank, because the thing is, right, in our industry, especially in the UK, like news is just bought for, right? It's just paid for news. It's actually not news. It's just paid for news, paid for prizes, paid for awards, paid for, right? So I love that you're standing up for that because that's actually what should be happening. And then, especially in affiliation, I think there's so much, affiliate news, affiliate sites. There are some really dark kind of areas on the web when it comes to affiliates, right? How to circumvent, whatever age checks and all that kind of stuff. So how do you see, when you see those kind of things, news websites publishing stuff that's actually not news or affiliate websites that are super dodgy, how does that make you feel as somebody that is like so on it when it comes to, trust and transparency?
Well, I think the fact that we are where we are today with CasinoNieuws.nl, that's only possible because a lot of others are not doing that and doing something basically completely different. But I completely understand what they're doing, especially the old school affiliates. News was just basically their way of having something new on their website so that Google saw that they were, publishing new content, but they weren't really interested in it. We made it at the core of our website. Yeah, and the honesty or the independent reporting, I feel that's the way to do it. If you're doing it, that should be the way to do it. And that's appreciated by Google, but especially by our readers. And that gives us the level of access that we have as well. I mean, I don't feel the regulator or the ministry would be comfortable talking with us on a certain level or give an interview or give quotes on stuff that's happening if they see that we're, doing half-assing our job or being just giving the positive things and not the negative things. So I feel it's instrumental to the core existence of our website to have that level of dedication to that type of reporting. And I think it makes sense. And I would love for that to be in a lot of other countries as well. So maybe one day we'll get there. Obviously, you have other websites that are doing a proper job. I follow Next, of course. I follow IGP. I follow SBC and whatnot. I still feel that our business model would work in other countries as well. But yeah, we'll see about that if that's something we're going to explore. But being not for sale, I feel that should be the basis for a lot of these websites. Even when you're publishing articles with lists, you can at least be upfront what makes for the list order, right? If someone's paying for you to be on the top, you can still be honest about it and still get away with it as long as you're honest. And because readers appreciate it as well, that they see that is something that's not for sale. And the same goes for awards. We're doing our awards in the Netherlands. These awards are not for sale. People cannot pay me or buy a table so they have a bigger chance of winning the award. That's not a thing because I feel it invalidates the award. Our award, whatever you think of it, is the Online Casino of the Year award. If you receive that, obviously people have influence because they can ask people to vote, but they cannot buy it. So then it's a proper award, then it has value. Otherwise, it doesn't, in my eyes.
I actually got two questions from Fintan Costello, who's also on our mastermind. The first one I shared with you yesterday, which was, how is your new sauna? The second one, which is actually the serious one, you kind of answered a little bit already, but I'd love to, because it's so different in the Netherlands, is how did you navigate all that difficulty of Dutch regulation, with the over 24 age gating and still become like the biggest affiliate in the Netherlands? How How did you navigate that? Because that is such a difficult thing to do for so many people that don't understand how challenging, that market is.
Yeah. So first things first, the sauna is it's nice. Now I moved to a new place and I wanted a sauna and I was having a drink with Vinton, I think, yeah, in Amsterdam actually, and he said I have a sauna guy, and obviously he sold his business at one point. So I said, you're proper rich when you have a sauna guy. What is a sauna? Where's a sauna guy? What do you knit that? He said, no, it's just a guy a business and they build great saunas. So they give me his number and I give him a call, and that same guy built my sauna. And yeah, I haven't used it as much as I want to. I've been busy and the weather is great for saunas, but yeah, it's great. Vinton is actually one of our jurors for Online Casino of the Year as well, because he lives in Amsterdam and he knows the Dutch market as well. So I'm very happy that he's on board as a juror. But yeah, about the legislation, it's in the Netherlands, we have a license model where the regulator, they give out licenses to operators, not to providers or affiliates or whatsoever. So at the same time, that makes it easy because anyone can start a website, anyone can start an affiliation website. There's no licensing process or application or whatnot. At the same time, the operators are very wary who they're working with, because obviously if I make a mistake and let's say I target 12-year-olds with the Donald Duck and the Mickey Mouse website and try to get them into like one of these operators, then the regulator will talk to the operator and say, like, hey, whatever this guy is doing, I hold you responsible because it's your license on the line. So they're very of who they're working with. That was one of the reasons why we started the KVA, which now is the QMRA in Europe as well. It's basically a stamp of approval for affiliates who they're working with, because I wanted to have this trust that, we know what we're doing, we know the rules when it comes to marketing and whatnot. So it was already a tricky start because there's a lot of stuff that we have to adhere by, but the regulator doesn't talk straight to us. They talk to us through the operators. And then 2 years ago by now, they had the ORCA decree. Basically, one of the most important thing for us as affiliates was you need to prove that 95% of your audience is 24 years of age or older. And that was a massive issue because that is something that all of a sudden, all of the affiliates need to adhere by. So I started with some others as well, but we started with all our competitors. We had sessions and said, we need to make sure that we're one line. We need to align our thoughts. Obviously, we're competing. We're big competitors. We're targeting the same keywords. We're fighting when it comes to SEO. Obviously, we're friendly each other. But on this thing, we need to align. We need to make sure that what we're doing is everyone is doing the same. So it's in or out, basically. And then we need to find a solution for this thing. And everyone was working on their own solutions, but we shared some information as well, because there's no market if all of us disappear. And then we feel, affiliation as a marketing channel would disappear. Maybe that would be not just bad for us because we would lose our livelihood, but it would be bad for the industry. It would be bad for channelization rate in the Netherlands. It would be bad for the regulator in the end as well. So I felt, we need to align and we need to share wherever something is possible. We need to share. Everyone had their own technical implementations. We worked very hard on some of the technical stuff, but when it came to compliancy and adhering by the laws, we needed to do the same. And some of the stuff wasn't as black and white. There was room for interpretation. So as long as we all have the same interpretation, we can not force, but guide the discussion that people can have about it. So we talked to the regulator, we talked to the ministry, and obviously you can't sit there with 30 people, right? Because, that's probably going to be annoying for the regulator and the ministry. So I did a lot of those talks, and Stephen Froelich from the QMRA, the KVA sign of approval, did a lot of these talks. And I felt we got where we needed to be because we're still around. We still have competitors. He said that we're the biggest affiliate in Netherlands. We used to be. You have some that are a bit bigger on some stuff. I think we're the biggest when it comes to headcount. I don't know if that's a good thing, but now we have, yeah, that's cost. We have like a proper team and whatnot. You have Mania Casino, you have other good affiliates. We're still around and we're still fulfilling our role in this chain that makes up the Dutch gambling industry. And I feel we're in a good place. There's been a lot of talk recently, especially the last year, about extra regulation, extra limiting factors, but we got both the regulator and the politicians lined up with their focus now on the illegal offering that's huge in the Netherlands as well. So I feel we guided the conversation to the right place. That's obviously not just on us. That's a lot of people involved there, but we did our part. And the focus now is on this huge illegal offering, which is, it's simply unfair because we got to adhere by all the rules. They don't. That makes for an uneven playing field. So yeah, we're happy where we're at, and we feel very confident in the Dutch gambling market now. It's still, obviously, it's not as a huge potential as it used to have before legislation hit, but it's still growing. There's still possibilities, and yeah, we're happy that we're still fulfilling that role.
Love it, Frank. Hey, amazing. Last question for you. When you look back at all of the things that you've done through your career, as we talked about through Poker News, the challenges that you faced as you had to re-find yourself, right, and rediscover yourself as a parent, but also, as a co-founder, what do you feel is one of the most important skills or behavior traits that you have that have gotten you to where you are today? Something that perhaps is very true to you and you don't see in many others.
I actually thought about this a little bit, and I was talking to a different founder like 2 months ago who he founded a online taxi platform website, something like Uber and Lyft, but like local in the Netherlands. It's a scale up, or it's not a startup anymore, but it's a massive business. They have a huge company, and we had different thoughts on leading by example. I still have no issue working, obviously no founder has, but like working long days or even vacuum cleaning here, the office, the little stuff. I like to lead by example. I'll do the best, and hopefully the people that work with me see that and feel motivated by that as well. He had different thoughts on it. He said, if I'm vacuum cleaning, that's costing the business 400 euros an hour. That's not worth it. It would be a waste of my time. And people work with me. They are ambitious, and they would see it as a weakness that the CEO is doing the vacuum cleaning. I'm just giving an example. But so we have different views on that. I feel that it's good for a business still doing the small stuff. I'm writing articles as well still till this day, even though I have other responsibilities, but I enjoy it, and I feel it's helping give the platform credibility, and internally see the people that we're working with here like, okay, he's just the same guy and doing the same as we do, and hopefully they get motivation from that and take that as an example. It's a different feel. I feel that's very close to me. I don't feel comfortable and just bossing people around, telling them what to do or holding. People are responsible, but it's not like if they make a mistake that I'll blame them till the end of time, as long as we learn from it and set up it properly, that it can't happen, like a mistake can't happen again. I feel that's something that we should strive for, and that's what we're doing. And I feel it's working out for us.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, Frank. That's like being operational now and again to actually understand what's happening everywhere is so important to be able to make great strategic decisions. So, great piece of advice. Thank you very much, Frank, for your time and conversation, being so open and honest. Really, really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for joining me on the iGaming Leader podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, head over to iGamingLeader.com for more conversations and insights. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. I'm your host, Leo Judkins, and I hope to see you next week.